Hi everybody, this is Angie from Tourangie.com, and today I'm in Fort Mill, South Carolina. I was talking to somebody who has commented on my YouTube videos of Bluefield, West Virginia, and knew that I lived near Fort Mill, and we started talking about Heritage USA and that I should do a video of it. And my plan was to do it anyway, I just had not been in this section of Fort Mill. So here I am. Actually, I'm leaving the DMV parking lot in Fort Mill, and I'm going to go through Regent Park, which is now the area that used to be Heritage USA. Now, if you're not familiar with Heritage USA, I'll be getting into that too. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, who owns portions of it now, and just driving through. It is a beautiful area and beautiful community with tons of houses, subdivisions. I'm sure all of those subdivisions have HOAs and different things, but there are tons of them over there. But back in the day, that area was known as Heritage USA, and we're going to get into that right now. So I need for you all to think back to the late 70s and then into the 80s. I know some of you all watching these videos weren't even born yet, but that was when Heritage USA was a big deal around here. It was a religious theme park with water slides. It was a Christian resort. Actually, there was a cable television network broadcast there. This area was 2,600 acres of that basically was called Heritage USA, and the key people in it were Jim Baker and Tammy Faye Baker. So, from my understanding, it was started to compete with Carowinds, which is across just up the road, honestly. And that may be part of why it did so good. Of course, the religious part, but we're now entering into Regency Park. And this is where it all basically was and took place. So I'm going to continue on. Back in the 80s, this was a major place. They had made tons of money, and with it being a church related theme park, I guess, because of being church, it was like considered nonprofit. Anyway, it became a huge tax issue, like tax scandal. And then, of course, the whole Jim Baker saga with all his drama and stuff basically ruined it. There is pictures up of different of what is his name, Jerry Falwell, going down the water slide in his suit, and Jerry Falwell was a major preacher back in the day. Anywho, I guess he's still very well known, or his legacy is still very well known. But at the point of Heritage USA, he ended up taking control over it when Jim Baker started falling apart and getting in all kinds of trouble. But in the end, he still had to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy on the Heritage USA. But it was considered at the time the third largest theme park by attendance, with 4.9 million visitors per year. So that was just behind Walt Disney World in Orlando, Disneyland in California. So it was the third largest. It totally shocks me that was, but whatever. Here in Fort Mill, now you can see this area is beautiful. You know, it's great for walking and biking. I'm sure the residents will absolutely love this area for their houses and stuff. Lots of trees. It's beautiful, quiet, peaceful. And further down the road, you'll see more subdivisions and different things. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Heritage USA before we talk about some of the places that have bought parts of it, and I guess the other scandals that have happened. Well, not really scandals, it's just drama. It's stupid drama. But anyway, we'll talk about that shortly. So back in its heyday, there was the Heritage Village Church, the upper room, which I'm not sure what that was, but then a 400 unit campground, the Jerusalem Amphitheater, conference facilities, the King's Castle, a skating rink, prayer and counseling services, a cable television production studio, a Bible and evangelism school, a visitor retreat housing, staff volunteer housing, and timeshares, plus the Heritage Island Water Park and Recreational Facility. Now you will still see this just up the road here in a little bit. You will see the Heritage Grand Hotel, as it was called in the day. Now I think it's just called the Regent Tower, and it's neat. Well, it's fallen apart basically. There has been a lot of controversy involving that tower, we'll get into shortly. But as you can tell, this is just a beautiful neighborhood now with no real trace of anything until we get up here to this tower. Now, right here is in just a second, I'm going to do an edit of the video because I get in behind this slow moving traffic and it takes 2 minutes to get where I'm going. So I'm going to edit this part of it out because it is ridiculously long and I don't have that much to talk about. So in just a second, once I get going again, I will be taking a ride on something called the Starlight Road, I believe is what it was called, and this will take us right past the Regent Tower, but I will be pulling in at Morning Star Ministries. So we're going to talk about Morning Star Ministries just for a little bit. They purchased, well, basically part of this area, and Morning Star Fellowship Church. I believe that was in 2004. I could be wrong on the date on that. But Morning Star has trying to revitalize some of the buildings and different things. And of course, Morning Star Church has had a thing going on with York County for years about the Regent Tower. It was maybe supposed to have been torn down in 2013. Then the ministry didn't want to see the tower torn down. So there's been a bunch of back and forth between all this. And that they were going to revitalize the tower and turn it into like basically an old age home or something. Well, somehow that didn't happen. And I'm not even sure what is going on with that now, but they have been, there's been a lot of back and forth in between all that. But you can see on the left there, that was the tower. You'll get a up close look once I pull into Morning Star. Morning Star is a huge church or whatever, of this area, and it's basically all around the United States. We drive through just of the actual church area. I'm not going to dig in too much with it, just whine and complain a little bit about it's a shame that the Regent Tower is, falling apart to the way that it is. Maybe somebody will be working on it soon, probably not, since, this has been an ongoing battle since 2013, and yet 10 years later, it's still, looking worse and worse and worse. But anywho, maybe somebody can use it for something, whether it's Morning Star Ministries but yeah, there's the tower, and you can see some of the brick is missing. The windows are just, some of the windows are out. There's a lot of damage, and originally, go way back in time, there was a lot of damage to this area from the 1989 Hurricane Hugo. And that is when basically Heritage USA ceased to operate. Of course, they had already filed bankruptcy and everything, but they could not recover from the hurricane, the damages from the hurricane. And that is basically what put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, was the hurricane. Of course, there were many things leading up to it, the scandal with Jim Baker and all that mess, and but still, this area right here is Morningstar. I don't know, like I said, I don't know much about it, but at least something's being used in the community or whatever. So that's all about Morningstar. I'm going to talk about more about the Jim Baker stuff, Tammy Faye Baker and Jim Baker. There are some great movies about TV shows and movies that go back and talk about Jim Baker and Tammy Faye and do a real life history of those. I highly recommend them. I can't come up with the names or what programming actually has those, but still, it's a very interesting. So let's talk about the whole Jim Baker controversy. So it was like 1980, late 80s. I'm wanting to say it was 1987. So he resigned from PTL Ministries, which was basically all over this area. Like, the actual show was recorded in a broadcast studio here at Heritage USA. So it was a show you watched on TV, just like some of the other religious shows that you see on TV. There was one recorded here at Heritage USA, and it was him. Anywho, he resigned from being over the ministry because of a cover-up of hush money to a church secretary, Jessica Hahn, because of an alleged rape, and there was actually, I think she was drugged too. But following that, there was a lot of investigation. Then they found accounting fraud, which brought felony charges, and he was convicted, imprisoned, and then later divorced. Tammy Faye divorced him. I think it was about 3 years after everything started to fall apart. So he, of course, he is still alive, and he was part of an infomercial this past year selling something on, I don't know, some infomercial, whatever. I don't exactly know, but he is still alive now. Tammy Faye died of colon cancer several years ago. I'm wanting to say like 2007, maybe even earlier than that. But after the divorce, she remarried, and she remarried the guy who helped build Heritage USA. So, thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, that's basically what started the fall of Heritage USA. And of course, when that happened, Falwell took over, and it was just, that's when he had to file for bankruptcy, and everything started to fall apart. And of course, the hurricane. So, as you can see, the rest of this here is just more, subdivisions, housing. There is a little pond or lake over to the right, past some of these houses. There was a place over there on the left. Actually, we just passed it. It's a vet clinic and an animal shelter. That's where I adopted my dog, Belle. But up here on the right was where the castle was. You maybe remember me saying Keen's Castle. It's no longer there. It's been tore down and everything. But it's up here on the right. Now, on the left was a place that I'm going to come back to and show off here shortly. So, yeah, it's just basically all houses and, subdivisions. Everything has an HOA. There is a campground still there, and it's at the area of the Jerusalem Amphitheater. Of course, the amphitheater has been torn down and everything, but the oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought. I apologize. The campground is there, so let me see if I can find some information on it. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't have all my information together on this. So that campground is called the Crown Cove RV Park. Also, when I was talking about the Keen's Castle, there was a developer in 2013 who had purchased some of the property here and began to demolish that castle, but it was stopped. The castle which had the arcade and the go-kart track back in the day with Heritage USA, was originally intended to house the world's largest Wendy's restaurant. So I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, it was tore down, obviously. I meant to mention that earlier. So now I'm taking a right into this little section. It looks like a weird little church. I want to talk about it for a second. I call it an odd church because honestly, it looks like a castle itself. When I drove up here, I thought, did they tear down the castle or change the road? But yes, they tore down the actual King's Castle. But this is called the Upper Room. And it sat empty for many years, and they did a renovation, and then it was reopened in 2010. It is a separate church, place of worship. It was the centerpiece of the Heritage USA complex, but now it's a separate chapel, and it has nothing to do with Morning Star. So since I don't know much about this, I'm going to read something directly from Wikipedia. But it was January 2009, a group called Friends of the Upper Room created an online petition to the Flames of Fire Ministry, which were the then owners of the Open Room, and asked them to consider donating the property to another ministry or selling it at a reduced price to save it from being tore down. The Upper Room building and surrounding properties were then placed on the market. And then in 2010, 565 people signed the petition. And there were rumors that it was going to be demolished, but it ended up being renovated and everything. And the Upper Room was acquired by a Christian concert promoter, Russell James, who started renovations. The facility underwent, of course, extensive renovations. But there's the outdoor Walk of Faith, and that was restored too. So there's a walk, and it's a walk by the river right there. It's called the Walk of Faith. So anyway, I thought that was some pretty interesting information. And of course, the church looks like a castle. So that's pretty cool. So we're at the end of basically our Regent Park Heritage USA tour. I'm going to continue on with this drive for just a little bit as I continue towards Indian Land, South Carolina. But I hope you enjoy learning where Heritage USA was originally, and a little bit of information about